believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson, and tonight I have Alex Sansone on, also known as the Suited Shootist. Alex was fired in 2018 for carrying a firearm in his workplace, and the way his story unfolded is quite unique. And I think the biggest question that we can ask ourselves regarding this topic is, do you really know the potential consequences of your decisions? And knowing that, would you change your behavior? Just to be clear, neither of us are saying that you should or should not carry at your workplace, only to share Alex's story and allow you to put yourself in his shoes and decide if you would make the same decision. So stay tuned for that. Just in a little bit, we're going to have Alex on. But first, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by POM Pepper Spray. POM is recognized by elite trainers across the nation. It is a modern and safe approach to pepper spray. POM has over 40 years of design and manufacturing experience in the industry and sources premium pharmaceutical grade OC for the most powerful, non-lethal defense product on the market. I carry POM with me every day, and I encourage you to do the same. And if you want to learn more about POM, you can look at the link in the description or the comments below. So if you're new or watching this as a replay, I want to say welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from. We always want to hear from you. This is a live episode, and there's a reason for that. We really want to engage with you guys, hear what you have to say in the comments. So don't be shy. Go ahead and drop in the comments where you're watching from. So I do have a tidbit of the week this week, and it is a very passionate tidbit. And it was so passionate that I had to pre-record it, only because I needed to record it in the moment that I was feeling quite so passionate about it. And so I recorded this just a few hours ago, because honestly, sometimes by the time I get to the live episode in the evening, I'm a little tired and maybe not quite as passionate as I am earlier in the day. So I want to run this tidbit by you here before we move on with the show. The tidbit of the week is called Step Up. As the weather is getting warmer here in Montana, there are a lot more people signing up for classes. And I think that's super cool. I'm excited for the weather to warm up. But it had some things happen recently, and I'm honestly a little bit hot about it today. And I just want to share something with you. I could be totally wrong about this, but this is just where I'm at with it right now. So I'm frustrated with the lack of commitment and integrity that I'm finding in people who I've been talking to for at least a year off and on, who I run into throughout my life, who say, hey, I really love what you're doing. I would like to someday learn, how to defend myself. I would like to someday learn how to shoot my gun. I would like to someday take a self-defense class, to which, of course, I adamantly encourage. I've kept up with a lot of these people via text message, email, you name it, right? Or see them from time to time. And if you're listening to this and you're one of those people, and if the shoe fits, I'm sorry, but I'm going to call you out, and this is the way it is, and this is how I feel about it. And again, I could be totally wrong, but it's my opinion. So the lack of commitment and the lack of integrity that I see in people overall in saying one thing and doing another is very irritating to me. And I can't really put my finger on why it bothers me so much, other than the fact that I feel like I have been working really hard to have integrity for myself over the last couple of years, especially as I've started this show. And so I see so many people making excuses daily. Right? And I'm not saying that I've never done that. I have done that many times. That used to be me. And I finally said enough is enough. If I make a promise to myself, I'm going to keep it. And this is not regarding gun training. This is regarding everything in your life, the smallest things in your life. When you wake up in the morning and you say, today's the day I'm going to start eating better. Today's the day I'm going to work out. And then you sabotage yourself and you don't keep promises to yourself. You guys, you think that you're doing an easy thing right now that feels good, but down the line, you're going to regret it. And here's why. If you don't do what you know you need to do today, then down the line, whether it's fitness, nutrition, classes, training, what you know you need to do today, you need to do it, because down the line, days, years, months from now, it's not going to be there for you. And you're going to wish that you wouldn't have given up on yourself today, that you would have stuck to the promises that you made to yourself today. Today is all you have. I cannot tell you this strongly enough, because I'm living it. I've been living it over the last year, especially with, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing in my life, but I'm just telling you, like, I can see this for you guys, and I want this for you so badly. And I hear you saying, I want these things for myself, yet you will not put the work in to make it happen for yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. As much as I want to invest in you and I want to help you, if you're not going to invest in yourself, then I can't help you. You have to do it for you. You have to make that commitment for you. And my biggest fear is that somebody is going to blow off something that they know they should be doing today, and in the future, they're going to regret it because they were too lazy and lacked integrity and couldn't keep promises to themselves and were sabotaging the process today. So you can never get where you want to be if you're not doing those small steps each and every day. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. It takes commitment. It takes discipline. But it's the best thing you could ever do for yourself, ever, for your family, for yourself, for your community, long term. I don't care what it is, fill in the blank. It's the thing you know you should be doing today that you're not doing. Fill in the blank. We've all got it, right? I want to encourage you, but I also want to kind of kick your butt a little bit, because some of you need a kick in the butt. You need to realize that all of the short-term gains that you're doing by feeling comfortable and doing all the things that make you feel good today are really going to suck for you later. And you're not doing yourself any favor at all. You're doing yourself a disservice. And I want to see you guys do well. I want to see you guys be happy. I want to see you and your families flourish, and I want to see you gain confidence and skill and ability. So there's my rant for today. I hope that someone out there hears this and gets a kick in the butt. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that, if you need help getting kick started. But the place to start is here and now, today. So step up and do what you know needs to be done. Well, I was quite passionate. But that is how I feel, and that's how I felt in the moment. And I'm glad that I recorded that in that moment, because I was very passionate about it. So, Adam, Adam, what do you think about that?
I'm going to leave that one alone. I think you said it well enough. And
I was a little hot under the collar there. By the way, what's
accepted.
That?
Challenge needed,
accepted.
Needed and accepted.
Okay. I wasn't talking to you, but okay.
Yes, you were.
If the shoe fits. All right.
Yep.
So Adam is working behind the scenes for me tonight. He's the founder of Defenders USA. So if you see him pop on the screen from time to time, don't be alarmed. That's how we roll around here. So he may have comments or questions to add along the way. Couple more things before we bring Alex onto the show. Defenders Live is now officially on almost every podcasting platform, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe there as well. Leave a review if you like what you hear. And if you don't want to miss another episode of Defenders Live, please go to defenders-live.com. Go to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for those email notifications. I send an email out to everyone on the list every week so that you don't miss an episode. So don't be shy. Shout out in the comments, banter, and maybe Alex will let us do a live Q&A at the end of the broadcast if anyone has any questions. I didn't formally ask him, but we'll see if he's up for that. I see we've got some viewers from Texas, Arizona, Nebraska. Lynn and Kathy again from Arizona. How are you? Chuck from Texas. Dylan and Casey. Hey, good to see you guys. And Northern Arizona. I'm not sure who that is, but thank you for that comment. And I have a feeling that somebody locally might be on here as well. I can't see the name, but I'm pretty sure I know who that is. So I think Tracy's on here too from Helena. Hey, Tracy. I think I saw you on here. So let's get on with the show here. Get Alex on. Alex Sansone took his first formal pistol class in 2009 and has since accumulated almost 500 total hours of open enrollment training from many of the nation's top instructors, including Massad Ayoob, Craig Douglas, Tom Gibbons, Gabe White, Cecil Burch, Chuck Haggard, Larry, how do I say Darryl Bolke, and many others. Spending his professional life in the corporate world, Alex quickly realized incongruities between best practices in the defensive world and the practical realities of his professional and social limitations. He founded the Suited Shootist in 2018 to address the overlooked social aspects of the armed lifestyle, focusing on what it's like to be an armed professional, not professionally armed. So let's welcome Alex onto the show. Hey, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. There we go.
There we go.
Appreciate you having me on.
You bet. No, the pleasure's all mine. I really appreciate you coming on. And I didn't mean to steal the show there towards the beginning with a tidbit, but sometimes you just got to say what's on your mind, right?
Well, and I'm sure that we're going to get into this later in the show, but I fully support that message. And it's something that I myself have been wrestling with over the last couple of years. And I encourage people to just it's okay to be bad at stuff. And, the expression I heard is if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly, because at least that way you're getting a rep in. And, one of the things that I have talked about, in some of the more recent videos that I put out is my goal is I'm trying to be a blue belt level of proficiency at everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the challenges that social media presents specifically is that there's a lot of focus around just the measurable aspects of performance-based shooting. And while that's important, because that's what's so easily represented, especially in the short format stuff of, Reels and TikTok, et cetera, right. There's a higher concentration of that represented than a lot of other things that are equally relevant. And because most of the people out there are putting out very impressive performance to inspire other people to try.
That's not inspiring them, though.
Well, especially not in the early stages, because, you get somebody who just bought their first pistol and maybe hasn't taken their first class yet, and they see somebody running a 2-second build drill, and they just go, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard to start at the
Yeah.
bottom in anything though, right? And that
Mhm.
is the part where it really sucks the most. And you and I both know this because we're both on a fitness journey. I see you posting on social media about that, which is really
Mhm.
admirable. And you have improved quite substantially over the time I've seen that you've posted.
Well, that's one of the perks of, the starting strength program is I am a slacker at heart, and the reason why I've been able to stick with it is because it requires ironically, it requires the least amount of effort, to actually work that program. And so,
Yeah.
it's
I think people forget though that we all start somewhere. I mean, even
and that's
Adam
it.
Lynch started somewhere, right, Adam?
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, and I think that we look at other people, we want to be like them for whatever reason. We forget that everyone starts somewhere. So,
Yeah,
anyway, I think the people that are coming into classes and doing hard things and not really being sure about what they're doing are the most inspiring people,
100%.
because they
Yeah,
are putting themselves out there. So, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox about that. That's not what the show's about. But thanks for commenting on that. So the
of
Suited
course.
Shootist, you
Hmm.
started this in 2018. How did this come about?
So, as you mentioned, the kind of the catalyst for all of this was I got fired from a job for carrying against company weapons policy. And the reason why I was not because I was, working in a bad part of town or working a particularly high risk job. It was because all of my exposure to the training world up to that point, uh, the sort of the consistent mantra was you carry your gun everywhere all the time. Hell and be damned the consequences.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, well, that's the way it's done. So that's what I'm going to do. And as I talk about in the video where I go in depth on on the experience, the company didn't start out as particularly hostile or anti-gun. When I started, it still had this sort of startup tech vibe. It was a small 200 and something person company, and but quite literally, one of the customer service guys was cleaning a suppressor at his desk. You saw ID badges hanging off of Glock lanyards, HK ball caps. I mean, Houston, Texas is still a fairly firearms friendly part of the state, so it's not a taboo subject socially at large.
Mhm.
And once the company got bought out by a larger corporate institution, then corporate policies started to creep in, one of which was a prohibition of carry. And my thought process at that point was, okay, so that means that I just need to be a little bit more discreet and a little bit sneakier. And, at that time, the 2016, 2017 era, it was before the discrete carry concepts clips were really a thing. The Enigma didn't exist yet. Deep carry was relegated to things like Thunderwear. And so my thought process was, well, the most discreet way for me to carry my optimal firearm, which is a Glock 19, would be in sort of a secondary compartment of my work bag, because I literally had the thought, I cannot imagine a set of circumstances where I'm going to be subject to that level of invasive search.
Mm.
Um, Forget where the quote originated, but it was, when you have a plan, God laughs. I was like, well, you're going to learn today. And I found out exactly the circumstances under which you can be subject to that degree of search. And I was terminated in short order. And because I know the questions are going to come up, because they came up repeatedly on the YouTube videos. No, it wasn't an illegal search. It wasn't an unconstitutional search. I didn't work for the government. The government wasn't involved in this. There was a contractual obligation between myself and my employer, which is known as an employee agreement. And part of that is that the employees are subject to search, at the discretion of the employer. And while I could have theoretically refused the search, still would have resulted in termination.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, well, how did anybody know that at your work that you're a gun person? Because you shouldn't talk about that kind of stuff. Again, this is Houston, Texas.
Cat was out of the
Deer,
bag.
deer season is a state holiday. So, I regularly went hunting and shooting with coworkers because you know how they say like it's better to have a friend with a boat than have a boat yourself. It's kind of the same way. It's really handy to have a friend who's either got a lease or has got some property out in the sticks where you can go shoot. Since I'm not from here, I don't have that luxury and didn't have the resources to acquire it myself. So I availed myself of, the property of friends where we could go and shoot stuff. It just so happened that as best as we can tell, we've kind of had to piece this together after the fact. After the company's annual active shooter training, which was the risk averse, corporate lawyer drafted farce that it is. I'm trying to keep this as diplomatic as I can. One of my friends who was a shooting buddy of mine had simply made an offhand comment about, like, well, something goes down, Alex will take care of it. And a concerned third party ran to HR and said, I think he has a gun. And that's all it took. And so I'm getting searched. My desk is getting searched.
You were
my
searched
personal
by police,
effects.
though, right?
No. I was searched. The cops weren't called. None of that.
Oh,
I was searched. I was
Okay.
No. I was searched. I was searched by HR and the company security guard.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there was no law enforcement involvement.
Yeah, because I thought they patted you. They patted you down first, and then went to your desk.
So I was told that I needed to go to the HR office, which I did. And so they asked me to empty my pockets. They asked me to turn up my pant cuffs to expose my ankles. And they asked me to lift up my shirt to expose my waistband. I was never physically frisked. I was never wanded.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that time, they were going through my desk and my personal effects.
Okay.
And because, at that point I had my work bag secured in the bottom large file drawer of my desk. So they went through that and found the gun.
Did the policy change though when it changed hands? Was the policy different before the new people bought it? Does that make sense?
As far as I can tell, before the corporate takeover, it was effectively kind of a don't ask, don't tell type of circumstance where there was no formal policy. They weren't going to address it in any kind of official capacity. It was what we don't know can't hurt us. Okay,
so then you are terminated that day.
Oh yeah, quite literally within the span of a couple hours. There was not a lot of deliberation over it. It was fairly cut and dry. I mean, at the end of the day, I violated a policy and one that was severe enough that there wasn't really any kind of leeway.
And so what's the aftermath like after that? Because had you been with the company for quite some time, I think.
Yeah, 4 years. And it was a pretty lucrative job. So, when you're working in commission-based sales, I mean, quite literally, I set a 6-figure job on fire doing this. And so that went away overnight. And anytime you're in a circumstance like that, you don't get to start where you were. You have to, you have to build back a book of business. And that is assuming that you're able to get into an industry that is comparable, because, there's going to be a whole lot of folks that are, very high volume turnover, churn and burn, sort of, Jordan Belfort type sales organizations, where the earning potential is there if you are either unscrupulous, work 90 hours a week, or, some other sort of unhealthy balance. But, that was not something that was easily replaceable. And so it took a year for me to hit a level of professional stability.
Wow.
And that wasn't even getting back to 100%. And, quite frankly, it's still been a bit of a slugfest subsequently, just because, I mean, I'm still not back to where I was from there. So, there's still some lasting ripple effects of this, not to mention the fact that meant that my wife ended up sort of having to incur a whole lot more financial responsibility for the household in the interim, as well as some of the subsequent debt that we incurred just kind of treading water. So, there was a lot of lasting impact on this that that I didn't really think about beforehand, because nobody ever talks about this situation like it can actually happen, or like there are significant consequences. Because anytime this comes up, invariably the eraser phrase that you hear that just dismisses everything else is, well, at least you're not dead. Okay, factual statement technically, but the reality of it is that, I'm sitting here, a professional suburbanite. I don't have a particularly high risk profile lifestyle. To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody out in this world that's looking to do me harm by name. And so a couple of years later, it was actually at the 2019 tactical conference. I sat in on Eve Kulsker's business tactical presentation, and she was the one that introduced me to the risk matrix. And basically, you've got your two axes, and the idea being is that you have the probability of an event and the severity of its consequence, and the combination of the two dictates how significant the outcome can potentially be, and therefore how much consideration it should be given. So, for example, using this, while yes, being present during, a spree killing at the office has the potential to be incredibly high consequence, it's also incredibly low probability. Mm-hmm. So as such, on that matrix, it puts it in kind of a medium high level of severity. Whereas, while admittedly the severity of getting discovered armed against policy doesn't result in the same, I'm still breathing, but the probability of it is dramatically higher because I'm in such close contact with so many people 50 plus hours a week. And every one of those interpersonal interactions I have is a raffle ticket on getting made. Mm-hmm. So eventually one of those is going to hit.
And your number got drawn.
Yeah, exactly. My number was up. And so I got to ride the ride. And it was really amusing in the aftermath, once I shared that story on YouTube, the number of people that were adamant that what I experienced didn't happen, or that really? I did it wrong somehow. It's like, okay, cool.
I was going to ask you about the internet trolls because they're everywhere.
Well, thankfully, there weren't necessarily a whole lot of trolls. There were a whole lot of people that were, there was a lot of tough talk from a place of conjecture and theory. But one of the expressions that I'm fond of from Darryl Bolke is anytime somebody starts a sentence with "I'll just," what they mean is "I've never." So, it's like, cool, you can talk theory all you want, but this is the one area where I've actually got real world experience. So, now admittedly, it's a sample size of one. However, there have been some other folks that shared experiences with me privately where, maybe not necessarily the exact same circumstances or to the same level of severity, but I think that at large, just like with anything, when you get a nuanced and complex topic that gets distilled down to a talking point, mm-hmm. so much of the relevant significance goes away that it doesn't equip people to make an appropriately educated decision. Mm-hmm. And like you said in the opener, I'm not here to tell anybody not to carry at work. I'm not here to tell anybody to carry at work. I just want people to know what the score actually is, because, at the end of the day, it was still a life-altering event, and I suffered an incredibly severe negative outcome due to the tool that I ostensibly am carrying to improve and prolong my quality of life. So there's a certain level of irony there. And
Right.
the other part of it that I kind of started looking at very critically after the fact was, it's very common to hear people say, well, okay, I don't go anywhere where I can't carry a gun.
Mm.
How many of those people will laugh at someone who thinks that the gun is a magic talisman that wards off evil? And the problem is those two lines of logic are scarily close together, because while a firearm is the optimal tool set to give somebody the ability to, repel someone else trying to impose their will on them, you're not unarmed because you don't have a gun. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. Presumably you're not. There are some people out there that are completely unarmed without their firearm. And for those people, I strongly encourage that they take a hard look inward and maybe diversify their skill set, because that's the other part of it. Like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of fixation on technical shooting. There's a lot of fixation around the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the equation for sure, but it ain't the whole puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's getting overly fixated on it has the potential to blind people to the bigger picture. And,
I agree.
if you're able, if your awareness and your avoidance are good enough, I believe it was Farnham who was quoted as, the superior gunman uses his superior skill, his superior knowledge to avoid using his superior marksmanship, or so. I'm butchering the expression, but it's something to that effect.
Hi, Adam.
Hey, so Alex, I love how you're bringing up the fact that, right, the gun is not the end all be all to everything. In fact, to me, if you've had to use the gun, pretty much everything else you did has failed. And
exactly.
So I love that. Hey, the reason I jumped on here is in the state of Colorado, which is what I know the most of because that's where I was law enforcement. And I'd like to hear this from Texas. I always got people asking in my concealed carry classes and others that, hey, that if my work policy has a clause saying, okay, I can't carry weapons of any type, pepper spray, guns, whatever. If I do, I can get fired. Not only that, I would get arrested for doing so. Now, in Colorado, that's a myth, right? Unless they've posted no guns on the exterior of the thing. Right. If it's just written in the employee policy in Colorado, that was not an arrestable offense that you're going to go to jail for or deal with cops over. I don't know how that is in Texas. Would you talk about that? Do you mind? I mean, was there a fear to you that there was going to be legal consequences to you on this besides just getting fired?
Well, so to the extent that I can, I don't have a legal background and I have a law enforcement background. The extent of my legal understanding is, I'm a graduate of Mag 40. I've read Andrew Branca's book and I sat in on a couple of Massad Ayoob's lectures at TACCON, as well as, I'm fairly close friends with, Chet Palumbo, who on YouTube is the combative lawyer. If you haven't,
so then you're
checked him
better
out.
trained in the law than the vast majority of people right there.
I have a working layman's understanding. But point being is, no, there was never really any concern for criminal prosecution. Just because in the state of Texas, unless it's like a government building, like in Colorado, they have signage that can be posted where it's criminal trespass of somebody with a carry license. And that's obviously evolved when we went from concealed carry only to then including open carry and then including constitutional carry. But, while it's theoretically a jailable offense, my understanding is that I don't think that that's ever actually been applied in any real severe level, unless the person was doing something else that was just so criminally stupid that it was just sort of a multiplier or something else that they could throw at them. but again, that is a loose interpretation at best. To the short answer to your question is no, I wasn't really concerned of any criminal prosecution, because, essentially the only thing I was potentially guilty of was trespass, but I didn't really have a choice but to leave when they asked/escorted me. So, it was there wasn't really a criminal component to it in that regard.
How does that conversation go, I wonder, with your wife? Like, you call her on the way home and, that's what I wonder.
Wasn't fun.
I bet.
So I'll jump back off. I just wanted to help dispel the myth that people think that, hey, if my work says I can't carry and I get caught carrying, not only am I get fired, I'm going to get criminally prosecuted. Now, I think that's geopolitical based on the state we live in. But I know for the vast majority of the U.S. West, that's not the case. But I mean, still, you suffer a grave consequence from it, right? I mean, taking away a six-figure salary per year. I mean, that's massive. So I tell you, I'm so glad you're here. Your channel's got, just shy of 1 million something viewers. So, I mean, which is phenomenal. We have less than 10,000. So I hopefully a bunch of people will jump on your YouTube. Maybe we can bump it up to 1 million, but it's a fantastic thing. And I follow you and I'm glad you're here.
Well, I appreciate the support. Your math needs a little work. I'm not quite to 1 million yet, but we're getting there.
Yep.
Do you think he just made that up, or do you think he really thought that? I don't know.
I think I suspect he was being overly gracious.
It could be. I can never tell when he's joking sometimes, and he thinks it's hilarious. Yeah. Anyway, so the Suited Shootist then, was that already started before this incident happened?
No. So basically, because as I mentioned, the company that I wound up getting fired from, there was no dress code. It had, kind of a tech vibe. People were able to wear whatever they wanted. And it was at that point, because that was like just when I started working there and I just got married. And I was at that point kind of working on my style a little bit.
Style? But I don't even have any kind of style. I don't even know what that is.
Everybody has a style, and it's one of those things where people confuse style and fashion. Fashion are those whimsical, cyclical, the runway stuff where you go, what in the heck? Why? There's no possible way a normal human would wear, 18 trash bags and a string of Christmas lights.
Okay.
Style is really nothing more than individual branding. And, it is a physical representation of who you are as a person. And it can be represented in anything from jeans and a t-shirt all the way up to, a $10,000 tuxedo. It's not simply wearing nicer clothing or more expensive clothing or fancier clothing. It just has to do with the the decisions, conscious or otherwise, behind what somebody chooses to wear.
Okay.
And so, that's why guys, especially, I can't speak to the female perspective on this. I assume that there's some parallels here where, whether it's Cosmo or GQ, there's going to be an article of, talking about, hey, this look is trending or whatever. Somebody goes out and they try it on. And for some people it clicks. And for other people, it feels like they're wearing a clown suit and they're never able to put a finger on why, but for whatever reason, it registers to them that it feels inauthentic. And, really that's the core of style, is authenticity in what you wear. And so
then you're just trying to help people that carry, that are interested in style and fashion, to help them out.
Well, it's one of those where when I lost that job, the next one that I wound up taking was like a legit white collar suit and tie gig. And I was in very close proximity to a bunch of people all the time. And I was a gun guy before I ever understood any of this style business. My first job in Houston, I was working at a gun shop for a couple of years. And at that point, I was the full-size gun, spare mag, 2 knives, backup gun, flashlight, basically duty belt worth of stuff crammed into your pockets and waistband. Well, when you're having to wear a suit every day, and in Houston, Texas, you're not wearing, heavy duty wool suits because you'll die. So tropical weight fabrics don't necessarily hold up all that well to the clips and corners and sharp edges of defensive tools.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that if I'm having to present a, very professional impression, and I'm sitting here asking people to, stroke a check for $10, $15, $20,000 at a time, I need to be able to communicate just sort of, with subtext, a degree of competence and authority that makes them more comfortable with that decision. Because are you more likely to feel comfortable handing that kind of money over to someone that looks like they're wearing a potato sack, or looks like they're actually wearing a jacket that fits them properly?
Yeah.
Because, and that's one of those ironies that really has just amused me to no end, is this sort of dismissal on the idea that caring about appearance is somehow, frivolous or effeminate. Yet I'm fairly certain that every single branch of the armed services has a manual that's about that thick that is nothing but uniform regulation and grooming standards.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because of the message that it conveys.
I get that.
Yet somehow, once you get into the private sector, the rules change for some inexplicable reason, which personally I think is bogus. But point being, bring it back full circle. In that type of dress code, it wasn't practical to try and carry a full complement of, almost duty gear at that point, especially knowing the severity of the consequences that I just suffered. And so I really had to start doing some math on, okay, how do I discreetly carry guns in these types of circumstances? Now, initially, I went the complete polar opposite end of the spectrum, and I went to a 32 Kel-Tec and a pocket holster because it's so unobtrusive that it basically disappears.
Adam's laughing in the background.
even in a pair of linen pants. Now, that wouldn't necessarily do anything for me if I was subject to search again, but it was unobtrusive enough as to not draw attention. And if I was, appropriately intentional about what I shared with coworkers, then I wouldn't necessarily draw the same type of scrutiny that I had previously. And that was also where I started playing with the idea. I was like, okay, if I'm going to carry a regular gun, that means I'm going to be carrying it under a tucked in shirt. So that's going to be a draw time of this. So do I want to have an optimal gun that's harder to access, or do I want to have a less optimal gun that I'm able to bring into play more expediently?
Right.
And so, I started sort of working that math problem. I was like, well, first hits kind of what matter. So I'm going to lean towards the less optimal tool that I'm able to employ more expediently, because, a draw to first hit from a 32 in 1.25 is preferable to a draw to first hit with a 9mm in 1.75 or 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. That was the conclusion that I came to that had me initially, go to pocket carry. And then I started playing more with, okay, how can I make tuckable holsters work? Then the Enigma came out, and that just sort of completely, revamped the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
that
the other part of it was
everything for me when the Enigma, when I found out about it.
And then also just, the idea being that if you're in a circumstance, if you have the luxury of not being constrained by a dress code, cool. Then at that point, it's a whole lot easier to carry whatever you want. Mm-hmm. However, there's a lot of folks out there that either because of professional, social, religious, or cultural constraints have some degree of dress code that they have to abide by. And I don't think it's particularly productive to tell that very large segment of the population, too bad, so sad, sucks for you, dress around the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're doing is you are saying, hey, now all of a sudden, no, we're live. That's an orange gun. I don't know how YouTube will feel about that, though. Anyways, hey, last thing I want to do is get you demonetized. It's like, hey, you have to live your life around this thing.
Yeah.
If there are people that want to do that, if there are people that are in a position that they can do that, cool, awesome, rock on. But I don't think it's fair to make that a barrier to entry.
Yeah. I don't think anyone can make that excuse anymore with the technology that's out there now. I really don't.
These days it's easier than ever. Again, back in like 2015.
Yeah.
Holy 9-10 years ago. Wow. We didn't have the kinds of, and that was another one that really irked me. And it's one that I actually picked apart in a video of its own, where the whole concept of the gun is supposed to be comforting, not comfortable. That expression needs to die because it was coined. Now, don't get me wrong. Clint Smith is a figure in this community of renown for a reason. I'm not saying that he's wrong by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying is you have to look at the context under which that expression was coined, because if I'm not mistaken, he said it back in the early 90s. At that point, the only guns that were available to carry were either full-size duty guns or snubby revolvers. There was no middle ground. And there was, at that point, a dramatic compromise in performance between the two.
Mm-hmm. I want to remind everybody, sorry to interrupt you. I want to remind everybody we're almost to the end of the show. So if you have questions for Alex, I'm assuming you're okay with questions.
Yeah, of course.
I formally ask you before the show. I forgot, but
not a
if
problem.
you guys have questions for Alex, put those in the comments now because we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. Yeah. Hey, Adam, do you have another question?
Yeah. So, Alex, if I can jump in,
please.
It drives me batty to see the gun crowd look all tactical all the time, right? It just screams gun, right? They're all 5'11" out, right? Yep. They just look like the gun guy, the gun girl. It just screams gun, or really it screams, "Hey, come beat me over the head and steal my gun from me," right? It also can hurt you later in the jury process if you ever have to use the gun, if you're always the gun guy, the gun girl. So I really love how you've changed that paradigm to where now you look like normal people, only that with a sense of fashion. And should we not, or a sense of style, really better yet style, not fashion. And should we not be missionaries of the 2A in a sense of not looking like the tactical gun guy, right? That just came out of some PMC Soldier of Fortune magazine, right? And there. So my curiosity is this, because you're a very dapper individual, right? The guy I want to grow up to be, somebody who also carries guns. Where do people like us, dudes like us, who are used to wearing the tactical all the time, where do we go to find the right kind of threads, the right kind of clothing that hides this, that portrays a really good, clean, crisp image? I think it's so important. Where do you recommend?
I've been saying for a while that if I could get everybody that shops at 511 just to shop at Duluth Trading Company, I'd be happy.
Yes.
But the reality of it is that even just sort of embracing the kind of vintage Americana workwear, denim, duck canvas pants, chambray work shirts, Henleys, that kind of stuff. None of it's particularly fancy. None of it is particularly, refined to where someone is going to put it on and feel like a fragile little dandy. It's got some, real heritage behind it. And, it's the kind of stuff that, longshoremen and steel mill workers were wearing back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So, if your concern is to, not want to come off looking either foolish or effeminate, those are some pretty safe bets. But, the other sort of, I guess slightly more self-promotional answers would be I've got the Bespoke Solutions Facebook group, which I have shamelessly attempted to model after the Filster Concealment Workshop, insofar as trying to foster that kind of think tank where people are able to crowdsource good advice, bounce ideas off each other, and just be able to, sort of open up and be a little bit more exposed and vulnerable without the concern of ridicule or trolls or some of the more unfortunate levels of BS that the open source internet subjects us to. I do also offer one-to-one style coaching for my black tie level patrons on my Patreon. So if someone wants like some actual
there you go,
one-on-one
Adam.
time, that's that's something that I can certainly help with. But there's a lot of resources out there. And at the end of the day, it's like, look, you're either going to spend money or you're going to spend time, but you're going to spend one of the two. And so, I get it that like I have been a collector pretty much since I was a kid. Like it started with Star Wars figures, and then I graduated to cigars, watches, guns, and, clothing. So it's always been something that's captured my attention, but I get that not everybody is going to geek out about it. And the cool thing is that once you spend a little bit of time kind of understanding who you are stylistically, it's very easy to put together a formula of maybe a dozen to 20 pieces. And then you can literally just close your eyes, reach into your closet and granimal something together, and it's going to work. It's going to fit. And it's actually going to jive with who you are as a person.
Let's talk soon.
Yeah.
So what does a neck scarf say about you, Alex? I wonder, because I wear those frequently.
Oh, that is very much going to, like, are we talking scarf? Are we talking ascot, or what material?
So,
There's I've got one. I've got, but that's definitely kind of my, like, if I'm fully suited and I'm actually wearing like an overcoat on top of that, that's kind of like the necktie for the overcoat kind of thing. And it's kind of,
I just wear it because it keeps my neck warm.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's always that balance of the function and the form. So,
Maybe.
Thankfully down here in Houston, keeping warm is rarely as much of a concern. The environment tends to take care of that.
I live in Montana, right? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you had mentioned it during the opener, but
I forgot.
Like I grew up in DC, so I got the worst of both worlds. We got the 95-degree summers and the 20-degree winters. So I moved south to get away from as much of that as I possibly could.
There was a question here, but I think you already answered it. The answer, or the question, was, what was the scenario that outed you? And maybe this person didn't come in until later.
Yeah. So again, very high level. In the early days of my time in the company, when guns were not nearly as taboo of a subject, one of my coworkers and I would routinely go hunting and shooting together. Fast forward several years after the corporate takeover, and things have gotten considerably more gun hostile. And after the annual active shooter training, PowerPoint and video presentation, there was just an offhanded comment made about, if something goes down, Alex will take care of it, which was overheard by a pearl clutching third party that felt compelled to run to HR and express concern that I might be armed, which then is what triggered the whole cascade of me being subject to search.
Okay, well, then we got this other one here. I think Adam was the one that posted this one. It says, for the professional white-collar guy, what needs to be spent dollar-wise annually to be both stylistic and be able to carry comfortably? That's a hard question to answer.
Again, you're going to spend money or you're going to spend time, because I'll use what I'm wearing currently as an example. The brands are not going to mean anything to anybody who is not already a bit of an enthusiast in this arena. But suffice to say, if you were to go into Saks Fifth Avenue and buy this shirt and this jacket off of the rack, you're going to be spending probably $300 and $3,000 respectively. And between the two of these, I think I spent a total of maybe $150.
Wow.
So, knowing what to look for certainly helps, because I'm a huge fan of secondhand and consignment, because a lot of exceptionally well-crafted brands don't have the same kind of recognition as the fashion brands like, Gucci. And so you're able to get them for pennies on the dollar, and I'm effectively paying the same price as I would if I were to walk into, a conventional department store like a Dillard's or a Macy's or what have you, but I am getting an exponentially higher quality garment for the same money. So you don't have to spend a lot of money in order to dress well. And that's another delineation that I really try and hammer home, is there's a big difference between dressing well and dressing up. Dressing up is what you do for Halloween. Dressing up is wearing a costume. Dressing well is simply having a degree of care and intentionality behind what the clothes that you put on your body.
We're just going to have to hire him to go shopping with us.
So I want to jump back in again, right?
Yeah, please, by all means.
Alex, back in the day when I used to have hair like you, and I was in college, right? I went to a college where you had to wear a suit, basically suit and tie in the morning, and so I found literally $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 suits or suit coats at the Goodwill stores, at the the American. One of the Veterans Associations and a couple other places. And really it became just a time of getting knowledgeable about what was quality, what was not, Armani, whatever. And really going through those, I was often shocked, right, that you could find, for pennies on the dollar, if not quarters of pennies on the dollar, really expensive stuff that looked really good, simply because, I have an uncle who's a very, very high-end accountant, and every year he spends about $15,000 on suits, or $50,000 on suits. And every year he just goes and trades them out. He just takes them to a secondhand shop, gets rid of them. And that's all he does. And he buys the best of the best. And I found by buying 6 months out of the rotation, or a year out of the rotation, and man, you could really get some good stuff going on. So I was wondering, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and that's the way I contextualize it to people is like, look, if you were to walk into, some mom and pop pawn shop out in the sticks, and they didn't know what they had, and they had a brand new Staccato C2 in the case with a $500 price tag hanging off of it, or excuse me, they had a gently used Staccato C2 with a $500 price tag. Why wouldn't you? Even if it was priced at $900, $1,000, you're going to find the money to snag that deal because it's such a steal.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of simply taking that exact same concept, contextualizing it so that it's, because, again, people will spend a good chunk of money on their carry on their carry gear, between the pistol, the holster, the optic, and whatever corresponding accoutrement. It's not that hard for somebody to get into their carry rig for, $2,000, $3,000. Yet you suggest they buy a $500 pair of shoes, and they look at you like you got two heads. I'm like, which one of these things are you really going to get more mileage out of?
Yeah.
Well,
different.
Laura, for your very fashion conscious husband, Justin, for very fashion conscious Russell and Brent, Alex, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, that was fun. All right, so we're going to wrap up.
It's been a bunch of fun.
We're going to wrap up for the night. So tell everybody, unless you want me to, it's going on the bottom of the screen, but for the audio only version, can you let people know where they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram to a lesser extent, and TikTok to a very lesser extent, the Suited Shootist. And then on Facebook, we have the Facebook group, which is Bespoke Solutions. And it's, I think, was it carry and wardrobe considerations or something like that. If you're going to join the group, there are a couple of membership questions to make sure that, number one, I'm not getting bots and spam accounts, and also that, if you can't follow basic instructions, I can't necessarily trust that you're going to be a useful contributor to the group. So
That's funny.
that's where that is. But aside from that, I also will periodically write for Gap Daily, and if you search me on YouTube, I've done a few other podcast appearances as well. But I really appreciate you having me on here. This was a ton of fun. You have a phenomenal lineup. So I appreciate being included among that. And if people have questions, I'm more than happy to help where I can. Obviously, like I said, depending if things get particularly in depth, we may need to explore actually looking at some kind of consultation. But if folks are struggling with something in particular, most of the videos that I've made are simply because I got sick of answering the same question over and over again. So
that is so awesome that you do consultations. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful for people, I bet. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love what you've done. I love how you've taken a situation that is less than ideal, and it sounds like you're doing some great work in the space, and I appreciate that. Hey, Adam.
Well, that's go ahead.
One last thing. Is there a female version of you out there?
Definitely not me.
Well, so kinda. Interestingly enough, not so much now, but Tessa Booth, when she originally started her Instagram page and then subsequently her YouTube page, Armed and Styled was approaching this from the female perspective. And she has done some fantastic content. I honestly, it was a little envy inducing at times because I watched her do something like, why didn't I think of that? Like talking about various shirt fabrics and things like that and how they integrate, and how they behave with your carry gear. And I mean, her production value is also just, light years beyond mine.
So for you ladies, right, look up Armed and Styled on YouTube. I think she's even has a website. She's associated very tightly with Filster, PHLSTER Filster. But so for the guys, we got the Suited Shootist, right? For the ladies, we've got Armed and Styled. I would strongly recommend both. We've tried to get her on our on here on Defenders Live. We've not yet convinced her. We're working on it. But thank you for being here.
Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I am going to see you guys in the green room here in just a minute. I'm going to wrap up for the night. Thank you again for your time, Alex. Very, very nice of you to come on the show. I learned more than I expected. So that's good, right?
Great. Glad to hear that.
All right, guys. So to wrap up this evening, I want to thank all of you wonderful people who are supporting me on locals.com. You are my #1 subscribers, and I love all of you dearly. The Locals community, for those of you that don't know, is where I post exclusive Defenders Live content that you will not see anywhere else, including early access to certain Defenders Live episodes. We did the Brian Hill story recently, and I did release it early there on locals.com. And it's also where I host Defenders Uncensored. Defenders Uncensored is a series of roundtable discussions where we talk about things that are sometimes considered controversial, but we don't think they should be. And there's a reason why we chose that platform over others, because we want to make sure that we don't get kicked off for what we say. So if you want to check that out, you can go to locals.com, go to the Discover tab, search up Defenders Live. You'll find us over there. We'd love to see you over there. And one last thing, I do have a new email for Defenders Live. If you guys have any people that you would like to see on Defenders Live or topics you'd like us to cover, you can now email booking, BOOKING, booking at defenders-live.com. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to hear from all of you guys. This show is for you. It's not for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you beautiful people again next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time now. Until then, take care.